Hello, and welcome back to the Daily Stack, your daily show live to get all the biggest news in Bitcoin. And we are here this Monday morning to discuss the insane things that are happening over across the pond over in the Netherlands. They are talking about a confiscatory tax, 30%, 36% unrealized gains tax on your Bitcoin, on your stocks, on your bonds, everything that you hope to hold for the future to preserve your wealth and outrun inflation. They want to take it from you. So before we get started, we have two great guests today. We have Natalie Brunel of Coin Stories, of course, and we have Sanjna M, who is running her own Women for Bitcoin program over with Rhino Bitcoin. So we are going to discuss all this today. Let me jump right into the intro and get us started. They have run out of road for decades. Developed countries played the same simple game. Steal 2% of purchasing power a year via currency debasement, kick the can down the road, and hide the rot under a mountain of cheap credit. But as of this morning, U.S. national debt is sitting close to $39 trillion. And we are adding $1 billion of debt every few hours. And now the math is forcing the debt to become predatory as it approaches the exponential knee in the chart. In other words, the debt has entered its terminal phase, and governments are coming for the only resource they have left: you. This week, the Netherlands showed us exactly what the future looks like in the form of unrealized gains taxation, a 36% tax on paper gains you haven't even cashed out to enjoy. Let's look at the math. If your Bitcoin goes from $70,000 to $100,000 on paper, even if you never sold a single sat, you will owe the government over $10,000. You are forced to liquidate part of your position just to pay for the privilege of holding an asset that outperformed their failing currency. And if the market crashes before the bill is due, too bad. The tax is locked in at the earlier valuation. You can turn a real gain into a net loss and permanently lose a chunk of your stack. This law is scheduled to start in 2028. It passed the Dutch House with politicians openly saying, we don't like it either, but we have to. And they are not alone. Erica Payne and the patriotic millionaires just told the IMF exactly what the second half of this trap looks like: a global asset registry. They want to map the money and define what is enough. Because when a government is $40 trillion in the hole, enough is whatever you have in your bank account. They're building a digital panopticon to ensure no one escapes the burning house of fiat. Your taxes haven't even gone towards paying the budget in a very long time. Now they're telling you what the taxes are really for: limiting your personal economic power and agency. They want to ensure you never gain the economic velocity to question the authorities who broke this system. Thankfully, we live in a time where the most liquid capital asset in the world is also the most mobile and the most censorship resistant. And of course, we are talking about Bitcoin. And today, I am very glad to be joined by two amazing members of the Bitcoin community. We have Natalie Brunel and we have Sanjna. Hello, good morning, ladies. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having us, Rob.
Absolutely. So we are here to talk about many things, but first I would like to get an introduction of the two of you. Of course, Natalie, you've got a wonderful podcast, but you're also running this Women of Bitcoin Summit. So please tell us what is going on over there.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been my mission to just see more representation in Bitcoin ever since I went to my first Bitcoin conference in 2021 and noticed, oh my goodness, I don't see a lot of women in this room. And it was great and convenient for when it came time to go to the bathroom line because there was none. And the guys had to wait in a long queue. But I thought, how sad. It's such an amazing, apolitical, neutral technology for all of us to embrace and get ahead financially. And so I started my first Women of Bitcoin event with Callie Bailey in 2022. That has grown to be the largest in-person event. Every single year, we're going to host that again in Las Vegas, but we wanted to do more. So I partnered up with Efrat Fenigson and Christine Marie Turner of Abundant Minds, and we created the Women of Bitcoin Digital Summit. We already have more than 850 people registered, which is just insane to think about, especially given the price action of Bitcoin. And that's going to be held online wherever you are. You can attend for free March 4th and 5th of this year. We are so excited, and hopefully we'll get into it a little bit more in this conversation.
Wonderful. And Sanjna, you are doing your own Bitcoin education initiative for women. Please share with us that.
Yes, so it's such an honor to be on with Natalie and Rob. Thanks for having me, Rob. So I actually spoke to you on a Twitter space 2 or 3 years ago when I was talking about Bitcoin education. I started Wiser. I co-founded it with 4 other people. we were focusing on Bitcoin education and doing it in a kind of fun way where we were doing gamified education. Now I've shifted my goal a bit because it's always been on my mind to get more women in the space. It's just something that I've seen through Wiser that we just don't have enough of them in Bitcoin, and it's been so many years, and I've always wondered why there was a big gap in the space. And I think it's just the way we educate people, because all the education we have out there right now is quite technical. We've never had financial literacy in our schools. So it's something that people have picked up themselves after high school, after college. It's something that people have self-taught. And I think it's been super intimidating for women to get into. So it's been my goal to be that intersection of Bitcoin and education for women. It's helping them understand money structurally, not just about the Bitcoin price action, but how the financial system works and why Bitcoin was designed the way it was. So we really go back into the roots of, why money exists, the gold standard, how Bitcoin came about. It's more than just the price, the volatility. It's more about people just understanding why Bitcoin exists. So through Bitcoin for Women and our partnership with the Women of Bitcoin Summit, we're building clear, structured learning paths so people can understand before they decide. We're removing all the hype, the language, and just making it plain, clear, simple for women to understand and get into the space.
Wonderful. And one more question, Natalie, is in your outreach to women about Bitcoin, what has been the largest hurdle? What have you needed to get over first in order to bring them into the space?
Well, I've found that most of my women friends, peers, former classmates, or colleagues, they're just really nervous about the volatility. They see it as more of a speculative asset, and they're not interested in trading because they tend to save and invest more conservatively. So it's kind of interesting because after all these years of studying Bitcoin, I view it as the most conservative thing you could invest in. But of course, that short-term price action can really spook people. And so I try to frame it in the way that Bitcoin is really this technology that represents a permissionless open source ledger for everyone around the world to finally have a bank account in some instances for the first time ever. I think the human rights angle is one that really helps women understand Bitcoin because they tend to be more interested in sort of the storytelling, the community building, and really just helping people around the world. That aspect that Bitcoin is so powerful in, as opposed to sitting in front of a chart, looking at the price going up and down and trying to trade it every millisecond. So I think when you zoom out and focus on just how much Bitcoin brings about these revolutionary property rights in a digital way, it helps a lot of people, not just women, understand that this is something that we all really need to embrace.
Yes, and it is coming up, this event, March 4th and 5th, online. Go and sign up. And the website is womenofbitcoin.io. Let me just bring that up on stage for us so we can take a look at that. But yes, March 4th and 5th, 1 p.m. Eastern. It's all online. It's free. So if you have any women in your life, if you're not a woman listening to this, but you would like them to get a load of Bitcoin and understand what is going on in our world that we love so much and talk about on a daily basis, send them over here. Women of Bitcoin Summit, womenofbitcoin.io.
Yeah,
So
can I just share one more thing?
Please.
There have been some other digital conferences in the past, and I want to highlight how unique and special this one is going to be because it's really interactive and it's a choose your own adventure. We're actually going to have simultaneous panels going on. So very much you can choose which one. You can switch back and forth between the two. We have excellent, amazing speakers who have been working and building in this space for many years. So with each sort of section that we go through in the conference, you can choose which avenue to take, and then we kind of convene in these networking areas that are all, again, digital, that bring together women from all over the world. So we're really excited to be elevating how these digital conferences are produced and how they run, and we're just so excited for everyone to get involved. Again, more than 850 people have already registered, and it's open to everyone for free.
No, it's absolutely amazing. Very excited to see how you guys do it because, yes, there have been plenty of webinars and you can just sit and watch a Zoom, but to bring in the interaction and to be able to participate yourselves, I think is very important, especially for new people who are just getting into the space to give them that hands-on experience with Bitcoin is amazing. So power to you guys. Very excited for this event. And again, it is coming up March 4th and 5th. Okay, let's dive right into our newsletter. This comes out every single Monday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern, straight into your inbox. Today's edition is entitled Netherlands Ignites Global Capital Shock with 36% unrealized gains tax. Decades of reckless spending have reached their breaking point as governments are now turning private wealth to fill the hole. So yeah, let's start off with this story because this was quite the news headline of the week. This has been talked about for months, going back to last summer, but it finally got to the Dutch House of Representatives and they passed it. So we had a big post about this week. Of course, this is one of the Dutch parliament members explaining the tax about how even if you have a paper gain, you did not sell anything, you will still be taxed on it 36% for just having an asset that outruns inflation. So for the two ladies here, I would love to get your opinion. Sanjna, what do you think about this tax? What is going on here? And should we be worried about it coming over to other countries?
Yeah, so I actually live in Belgium. So we're neighboring the Netherlands, and they've introduced something really similar. It's a 10% unrealized capital gains tax. So, in Europe, if one or two countries are doing it, the rest are going to follow. It's just a matter of time. Luckily, it's not coming into effect until 2028, and hopefully there will be some tweaks and, some. I just hope that it doesn't go into effect at this number. But this just makes you realize that you do need to have assets. You do need to have some of your money in assets like Bitcoin. It's for them. It's the only way to carry, like you said, significant capital anywhere in the world. It gives people a way to diversify their savings and understand crypto and Bitcoin, and just make that educated decision before all of this actually goes into effect.
Yeah. So you're dealing with this in Belgium?
Yeah, it just so it's not. It also goes into effect of June in 2026, but they've made the announcement and it's going to happen. So there's a bunch of people leaving the country and finding ways to escape this tax and go to Dubai or just somewhere else that's not Europe, because it just seems like a lot of countries will be following the same thing.
Yeah, Natalie, let's get your take on this.
Yeah, it's something I wrote about this week in the news block. I hope everyone checks it out. I mean, it's straight up wealth confiscation, right? I mean, you're basically punished for doing what you're incentivized to do, which is seek yield and invest, because the currency is something you can't save in. So they're creating investors and speculators out of all of us, and then punishing the ones who do it well. And what's really sad is it's also an infringement on property rights. If you can't own something and have it be protected from these types of unrealized capital gains taxes, then do you really own it at all? And it's really sad to see. I mean, I was born in Europe, and to see so many countries on that continent move in this direction after, it hasn't been that long since World War II, and since we've been confronted with the forces of fascism and communism in Europe, and now we're moving back in that direction. I mean, that's pretty surprising to see. And I think that people will move with their feet and with their assets. We already saw an example of that in Norway when they passed a wealth tax. I think it was a couple years ago. They thought it would increase their revenue by hundreds of millions, and instead they lost over $500 million of revenue because billions fled to where their capital was respected and where their property rights were respected. So I think this is going to be a harsh lesson for the Netherlands. And I think that it's one that we hope we don't see across the pond here in the United States. But I also have heard different politicians, especially now since we have, populism kind of rising in the United States. We've seen some people flirt with these ideas as well. And I think it just shows a basic fundamental misunderstanding of economics, of property rights, and it's just the wrong reaction to a government that has been printing money and destroying our purchasing power. They're overspending, they're destroying our purchasing power, and the solution is not unrealized capital gains tax.
Yeah, and Sandra, you're over in Europe right now. Why do you think Europe is predisposed to taking these drastic efforts?
Honestly, I don't know. I think it's also just the way Asia is moving is extremely significant. I think all these countries making moves like Dubai, where there's zero tax. The countries over there are just getting richer and richer, and over here, it's just a running joke that we have with our friends and people that we know. But in the past few years, the amount of people that have left Europe, the currency is weakening everywhere. People are just not enjoying the same life that they could a few years ago. It's just much harder to be a business owner over here. People want to be an employee because it makes a lot more financial sense to work under someone and get that social security, get those benefits, get a high salary, but to actually work for yourself in a country like Belgium, and I know this is with other countries in Europe, it's extremely expensive. You're paying almost 50% in taxes. It's really hard to just register a company, to go through all that red tape and then to have to pay this amount in your tax. So it just makes sense now that people are leaving and want a better future, and finding ways to not have to put all your earnings into paying taxes. So yeah, that's what I think. Belgium especially, I mean, it's always been really high tax, but I think at least like 70% of my friends have left the country. It's just not a place that people see a future for their kids, a future where they can make a lot of money and their savings actually grow. And yeah, people are finding ways out now, and people are just leaving.
They are leaving. They are voting with their feet, and they are going to places like Dubai, as you said. Number one country for millionaire flight last year was China. Number two was the UK, right? And I'm sure that Europe fills out a bunch of the rest of the countries underneath that. So let us hope that America does not fall prey to these, you could call them populist, right? Progressive ideas of taxation that just goes absolutely insane. But we'll see, because there's getting more and more calls for things like this. Another video I wanted to highlight that popped up over the weekend was this Erica Payne. She's the president of Patriotic Millionaires, and she calls for at the IMF for a global asset registry, international limits on excessive wealth, and aggressive taxation to defend democracy. So you read that line and you think, okay, maybe she's got something there, but just listen to her voice and you can sort of feel where this is coming from. I got the video right here.
We have a beautiful opportunity in front of us, with the United States being such an unmitigated disaster as it currently is. Okay, so there is the opportunity, and within that opportunity, I would suggest three things. The first one, we have to have a global asset registry. We have to know who has the freaking money. And if they don't want you to know that they have the money or how much money they have, chances are they got it from somewhere they shouldn't have gotten it from, and they're spending it on something they shouldn't be spending it from. So number one, a global asset registry. Number two, we have to facilitate an international conversation about what is enough. And that if there is a number that is enough, there is a number that is too much. We believe that money becomes power. And when power threatens your democracy, you have to take away power. And the only way to take away that power is by taking away the money.
All right. Natalie, I would love to get your immediate reaction to that video right there. How does that make you feel when you hear this woman of patriotic millionaires speaking to the IMF? Oh. I'm sorry, Natalie, I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry. It's just wild to see. I mean, they're upset about the outcomes of this fiat system, which they designed, and the consequences have created this very K-shaped, top-heavy economy where very few people hold a lot of the money and the power. but somehow they're going to punish everyone, right? They're going to create a digital surveillance system. They want to know everything you have. And oftentimes they literally end up going after people in the middle class, right? I mean, we recently heard those Venmo transactions that they're looking for of over $600, but they're really not going after the people in power anyway. But I just find it to be so ironic and so just detached from understanding how this entire system works. And no matter how much they tax, it's never enough. They're just going to find a way to spend more and more. They want to know everything that you have, and then who is going to be the rulers? Who decides who gets to do what with the money and who rules all of us, right? This is why I think Bitcoin is so phenomenal, because it's a system of rules without rulers, and you have to all play by the same opportunities, the same rules. No one gets a special advantage. No one can print money. And I think it would create a more level playing field for all of us, where value would be rewarded as opposed to whoever's closest to the money printer. And it's just so sad to see people proposing these types of ideas that are tyrannical, really. I mean, they are. At the end of the day, they remove freedom. They remove our ability to own what we've earned and keep a sense of privacy. I think it's crazy to see it and to see people celebrating it.
Yeah. Sanjana, what's your reaction to that video?
I think Natalie said it perfectly. It almost feels like we're going backwards instead of forwards. And Bitcoin is actually the only solution where everyone is equal, right? They keep putting these things out in the media that they're trying to create equality by doing these things. But it just comes back to education, that there aren't enough people educated on Bitcoin to understand that this is equal money and this is what gives people equal power, not the current monetary system we're living in. And yeah, it's just ridiculous to see that we still have people who are trying to make Bitcoin seem like it's a punishment, but that's actually the solution of what we need in today's economy.
I just think it's also interesting that most people don't operate with, suitcases of cash. They operate within the current system that already has so much regulation in it, right? I mean, you're not going to buy a house in a back alley and exchange cash. You're doing it within a very, very regulated system where you have to, in many cases, reveal, what you're buying, how much it's for. Everything gets recorded. The same with stocks. Everything, in the form of these certificates is recorded somewhere. So they technically already have a registry. And yet, who are they going after? They're not going after the Epsteins. They're not going after the people that have all the power. They're going after the majority of people, which are good, hardworking people who don't do anything wrong. And we have our rights and privacy and our property rights infringed upon, so that they could do what with our money, right? I mean, it's just so wild. And I think that we need to make sure not to elect these types of policymakers into power and not give them a pedestal to brainwash people.
Yeah, and they always come up with the idea that they know what's best, right? And I think that's one thing that has always been with me since my youth is like, how do these politicians 3,000 miles away think that they know what's best to do to distribute resources or any of it? Just let us be. Human freedom is the best, and it allows people to thrive and fulfill their potential, where they think that they can just direct you and your money. And also what she said is that if you're not doing anything bad with your money, what do you have to hide? Well, hey, I mean, would she like her bank statements just broadcast out to the world, right? I don't think so. So we gotta step up. We gotta talk about these things more and more and more, because it's so important that we don't let the freedom that we have today be taken from us. And Bitcoin helps to reestablish that. And another thing that would really help establish all that is if Bitcoin becomes everyday money. And there's one company out there that's really doing a lot, especially in the last year, to help make that come true. We have Cash App. They just eliminated fees on Bitcoin buys over $2,000 and recurring purchases. They raised the withdrawal limits. That was a big complaint in the past, but now they're raising them for people who fulfill the requirements and are aiming to make Bitcoin everyday money. And as a little tidbit, over 50% of Americans aged 18 to 25 use Cash App on a monthly basis. That's pretty surprising. And we know that we need to go out and reach the youth. It's very important that we get Gen Z on the Bitcoin train. And I think Cash App is going to be an amazing ambassador to do just that. So Of course, we saw them turn on the Square merchants. They are able to accept Bitcoin. Over 4 million of them across the world can now accept Bitcoin with just a flip of a switch on their terminal. And that works perfectly with Cash App in this ecosystem. Of course, they are both companies that are under the umbrella of Jack Dorsey's Block. And now it's better than ever to use Bitcoin on a daily basis. Yeah. So have you guys used spent Bitcoin on a Square merchant yet? Have you done this, Natalie?
Yeah, for sure. Especially when you travel. Some of the conferences that I've gone to, there are more circular economies there, like in Lugano or in El Salvador, where they want you to spend your Bitcoin. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. I have two reactions to this development. Number one, we really need to see a de minimis tax exemption, because right now, if you're in the US, you're supposed to be recording anytime that you spend your Bitcoin as a sale, and you have to report capital gains tax on it, which is super cumbersome. It's really difficult to try to, organize and record all of the different transactions and at what cost basis they were. So I really hope that Congress can come together and pass a de minimis exemption. Some countries actually have it up to $10,000, where anything below that you can spend without being taxed. And so it encourages people to actually use it as currency. The second thing is it all comes down to incentives. If there are more and more merchants who say, you know what, I not only accept Bitcoin, but maybe I'll give you a discount, or maybe I only accept Bitcoin. You can't even pay in fiat. That's going to encourage people to use Bitcoin more as a medium of exchange. And what I think is needed is just more adoption and more education, because merchants who understand Bitcoin obviously want to accumulate it themselves. They're not going to want to accept fiat. They're going to want you to pay in Bitcoin. And I think those numbers are going to continue to grow. But it's been so exciting to see how many merchants have been onboarded. These tools make it very, very easy. And when you're buying in Bitcoin, it's actually really fun too, because I've done a lot of sales for my book in Bitcoin. I use a Speed app, and you just you hear that little ping, and it's gone through no middleman, no bank in the middle, no intermediary, no delays, no fees. It's just amazing to use Bitcoin.
Absolutely. Sanjana, are you using Bitcoin? Do you buy anything with your BTC?
So again, in Europe, it's a little different. I'm just holding forever. But I think, of course, finally some good news in Bitcoin. This also just makes a big difference for women, right? I think this highly affects women who usually face higher financial literacy gaps or risk aversion in investing, and they could really benefit from user-friendly, low-cost features, making it easier for younger women to dip into the Bitcoin space without having to pay all these fees and just put their small investments or savings into an app like this. It also it also normalizes using just crypto and Bitcoin in everyday life and everyday finance. It's something we also teach through the course that I created for Rhino for women in Bitcoin, and it's just giving examples that apps like these exist, features like these exist, and it's not as scary and as intimidating for women to get in, because from what they know or what they've seen, it's just been news and platforms like FTX, and it's all the negative media that is usually shown, but it's never good headlines like this that are shown. So I think this is something that needs to be shown more to women, and also something that they should be aware of and see the positive sides of Bitcoin and how they can use it.
Yes, I do think that using Bitcoin, spending it on things, is one of the most important things you can do as a Bitcoiner. Bitcoin needs velocity. If everybody just has it sitting there forever, then is it really money, right? We need to use it in the real world. It really opens people's eyes and lights up their face when they can actually buy something with Bitcoin. That is the magic. It is peer-to-peer money. So go out and use it. And I would say, if you don't have any Bitcoin, you need to get some Bitcoin. And that's why we are talking about Rhino. Rhino is one of the sponsors of the show, and we are so thankful for them, because they are really setting a new bar in terms of Bitcoin financial services. Before, Bitcoin finances has been slow, clunky, dispersed across multiple apps, but Rhino is changing that. They're a next generation Bitcoin banking app designed to handle all of your Bitcoin needs in one place. With Bitcoin, of course, with Rhino, you can buy Bitcoin at some of the lowest fees anywhere, more sats for every dollar, make payments on the Lightning Network instantaneous, near zero fees, send cash globally. If you got friends or family in another country, send them cash over Bitcoin rails using Rhino. And of course, you can DCA on your own schedule, set up automatic savings so you can stack sats on your schedule and build wealth over time. And soon with Rhino, you'll be able to pay bills, direct deposit, borrow against your Bitcoin, and even save for retirement all inside the app. No questions asked. And of course, security is a top priority. Rhino protects your Bitcoin with biometric verification, 24/7 fraud protection, and the confidence of knowing your Bitcoin is never, ever rehypothecated. And for long-term users who have a multi-sig setup with Casa, you can use Rhino as one of your keys in your multi-sig. So go today. Go to rhinobitcoin.com. Download the app. Of course, it's on Apple or Android. Use the code Bitcoin News, and they'll drop you $10 of Bitcoin into your wallet. No questions asked, just for getting started. So Rhino, huge fans of the program, huge fans of the app. Go to their X, check them out, send them a DM. You got any questions? They're more than willing to help you out. Very nice. All right, let's bring our guest back onto the stage. And I next want to talk about what is going on over here with Quantum. So we've got Nick Carter. He's a longtime Bitcoiner, but he's definitely ruffled some feathers over the years. And recently, he's been talking a lot about the quantum threat to Bitcoin. And he came out with a video this last week that actually raised a lot of eyebrows. So let's pull that up and love to get your guys' reaction on the other side of this quick video.
Well, I'll tell you what I think is going to happen, and I don't want to scare anyone. I think the devs will probably continue to do nothing. They say that there's some stuff happening. There's not a lot. And I think the big institutions that now exist in Bitcoin, they didn't before. They didn't in the 2x scaling wars debate. There were basically no institutions. They will get fed up, and they will, for lack of a better word, fire the devs and put in new devs. If you're BlackRock and you have billions of dollars of client assets in this thing and its problems not being addressed, what choice do you have? So I think this, if unaddressed by the devs organically, would lead to a corporate takeover, a successful one.
So Natalie, you are talking to people on Wall Street all the time about Bitcoin. And we've heard it this year that some of these fund managers, they want out because they're scared of quantum. They're putting a discount on Bitcoin because Q-Day might pop up at any time. They're not sure when. Is this a common thread that you hear with these big Wall Street players? Oh, I think you're muted. Sorry, Natalie.
Can you hear me? Hello?
There you go. Yep.
I think that a lot of people are concerned because quantum is something very few people understand, right? This is something that goes highly, highly technical. And so a lot of people are really putting their trust in those who have some type of background in those technologies. And right now, I think that there's a lot of fear mongering. I mean, Bitcoin is at the end of the day consensus based. We've seen debates happen in the past, obviously the biggest being in 2017 when we reached the block size war. And no one said we won't have something like that again in the future. And it might be over a hard fork when quantum is or is not a threat. I want you guys to remember, though, that all the research I've done, we're still years away from this actually being a legitimate risk to Bitcoin security. We just, the amount of qubits that are needed to crack anything related to Bitcoin right now are very, very far away. That's not to say that it can't happen sooner. Obviously, computing is advancing very, very quickly, especially with artificial intelligence. But when I speak to the people who I respect and admire the most, folks that have been, analysts in the space for many, many years, they're really not as worried. They think a solution will be out there for us to consider, for us to reach consensus on. I mean, obviously the incentives work in our favor, right? I mean, anyone who has a lot of money tied up in Bitcoin, even if it's institutions, they're not going to want to see Bitcoin fail. So I am not as concerned about it as I think some in the public are, but that doesn't mean that we can't just, we should just lay on our backs and not do anything about it, or not research, or not take these risks seriously. I just think that right now, be careful about some of the fear mongering, because I think that a lot of it's out there, and not in the case of Nick at all, because I think Nick is actually very, very, very well read and understands this subject. But other people I've seen are scaremongering, and they're saying like, hey, I have a solution for you. I have this quantum resistant altcoin. So be careful about that. Know where the information's coming from. Follow the motives, follow the agenda. And I think this is something that's a developing conversation, and I don't think it's an immediate threat.
Yes, and we are taking actions towards making a solution. BIP360 was merged into Bitcoin's GitHub repository to address quantum risks, introducing Pay to Merkle Root, a quantum resistant output type that removes Taproot's vulnerable key path spend. So there are devs out there. Nick has commonly said that the devs don't care anything about this, but no, we got Hunter Beast. He's leading this charge for BIP360. And this addresses some of the biggest problems that we have in terms of the quantum threat for Bitcoin. So the devs are making moves, and we'll see. Of course, in order for this to protect your Bitcoin, Bitcoin needs to be moved to new addresses that are quantum resistant, and that will take time for the whole entire network to migrate over. But this is a conversation that should be happening now, and I think it did take some people causing a stink in order for it to really get to the top of the list here. But now we are finally talking about it, and there are actionable moves being taken by devs to address it. So, Sanjana, I was wondering if you have looked into the quantum threat to Bitcoin and what you think is going on here.
Yeah, so again, I think there's a lot of noise for no reason. Yes, quantum computing is a risk, but like Natalie said, it'll take years. And okay, fine, with AI, it's possible faster than ever. But if you think about it in the bigger picture, Bitcoin's not been around for so long, and how many developments have we had already, right? So there is going to be a way. Developers are going to find a way to make this safe, to make this quantum computing resistant, and I think the biggest advantage is that it's so decentralized, right? We have to give all these developers a chance to find a way to keep coming up with new solutions and fighting any risk or fighting any threat from bigger companies to take over or say that Bitcoin isn't there for the long run because of AI and because quantum computing can take over. But I think there's always going to be a solution, and there's always going to be someone trying to fight Bitcoin and say that, look, this isn't the reason it can work, or this is another threat, or they're just scaring the people and the public and the people who, of course, are not as well read in Bitcoin or don't have as much technical knowledge to just say that this isn't an asset you should be putting your money in.
Yeah, it does seem as if Bitcoin throughout its whole entire history has had to deal with FUD, of course. We dealt with the ESG energy FUD for a good 5+ years, and that seems to have been beaten, especially as the data centers for AI consume way more electricity than Bitcoin does. And now we're dealing with, I think, quantum FUD and also criminal FUD. I think that's definitely in the headlines a bunch, that whether it be for ransomware or the attacks you're seeing in France, Bitcoin tied to criminality is another area that we will need to combat as a community in the years ahead. But speaking of Bitcoin and technology, we also had a big breakthrough this last week with Lightning Labs. They released an open source toolkit enabling autonomous AI agents to operate natively on the Bitcoin Lightning Network, allowing instant micropayments without traditional sign-up barriers. So this has been a common idea here. So agents have really exploded just within the last month or so with the introduction of Claudebot. But these agents need to be able to have economic power and be able to buy things and pay for themselves in some regards. Now, Lightning Labs is opening that up to them. This integration enables agents to perform instant programmatic micropayments without the traditional hurdles of identity verification, API keys, or manual sign-up flows. The release provides 7 modular skills that create a full stack financial environment for software, infrastructure, authorization, automation, and just absolutely amazing stuff happening over here at Lightning Labs. And that is the hope, that Bitcoin can become the native currency of the internet, not just for humans, but also for the AI agents that work for us. Yes. So would love to get your guys' comments. And yes, Natalie, I know you might have to run real quick, but please, would love to get your comments on this. And if you must leave, by all means, totally understand.
I love this news. I think it's so exciting. I love what Elizabeth Stark has done with Lightning Labs and all of her contributions to the space. We do need for AI to basically embrace Bitcoin as digital money. And one thing that I mentioned in a recent news hit that I did last week at Bitcoin Investor Week was that if you type into most AI platforms, hey, what's the best store of value and form of money for AI agents to spend and receive? Most of them say Bitcoin. And it makes sense, right? Because you don't need a bank account, you don't need APIs, you don't need all the things that you typically need with other forms of money. You can't, AIs are not going to send gold. Okay. I can promise you that. And a lot of the other tokens, they just aren't secure enough. So even AI recognizes that Bitcoin is that permissionless ledger that they would want to use. And with things like Lightning, you can do it on this even faster layer with little to no fees. So I think it's extraordinary. I think this is the future. And I think this will also be one of the catalysts that pushes Bitcoin. Because right now there has been a lot of excitement and news and development surrounding AI, but that means that people have been almost distracted away from Bitcoin. And when these two forces converge, I think that people will appreciate again even more the use cases for Bitcoin as we transition into this era of digital intelligence, which we will all be using to be more productive. So very exciting news, and congratulations to Lightning Labs.
Cheers. Absolutely. So yes, if you have to run, by all means, Sandra and I will close out the show. But once again, we just want to give a shout out to the Women of Bitcoin Summit coming March 4th and 5th.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope to see all of you March 4th and 5th. We've got phenomenal speakers. It's open to everyone. Again, it's free. We hope it's the first of many. And I just want to give a big shout out to our sponsors and for Christine Marie Turner of Abundant Minds. They're our platinum sponsor. Just so grateful that they came up with the idea for this. And Efrat and I are so excited to be co-organizing it with her. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Natalie. It's been great to have you. Cheers. So Sanjana, in terms of AI, are you using it? I mean, you do have a technical background. So I'd love to hear what you're doing with AI. And Bitcoin.
Yeah, I'm also from that generation where, AI is everything. I use it for work. I use it for just daily life. I use it for how to manage my kids. And AI is great. The more prompts you give it, the more efficient it gets. So finally, in some good news, we're seeing AI and Bitcoin merge in a positive way. It's enabling new use cases like microtransactions for content or services, expanding Bitcoin beyond holding to just practical utility, which could really drive value and adoption. I think, again, like a lot of my generation, a lot of women are using AI, and this is just a way to make your life more efficient, to make it easier. Yes, it can be a threat, but I think if used in the right way, if using it to your advantage, if you're using it to educate yourself more, then it's only going to expand everything you can do rather than threat what you're doing right now. So I'm a big fan of AI. I see Bitcoin and AI, just working together and making a lot of transformations in the space. Rather than hearing threats and all this negativity surrounding Bitcoin. I don't think there's as much bad as good that it can do.
It is great. We're using it every single day, of course, but it's funny how AI is supposed to make your life easier, but it just seems that the more you use AI, the more things you can do, the more you want to do, right? So you just get even busier.
Exactly.
So.
But it's great, right? I think now the fact that you can just create your own app within a matter of hours, and what you needed like a whole lot of money investment in developers to do that before. So yes, it can make your life much easier, but the amount you have to learn in a shorter time is just it's so significant, and it's so much nicer to be able to do things where it would otherwise take hours and a lot of money to do.
Yes, and it's creating a world of abundance in terms of information and the skills that are deployable by these AI agents. So you need something that is scarce, and Bitcoin is the only verifiably scarce asset that we have. So it just makes the case for Bitcoin even more that in a world of absolute abundance created by AI, you need a scarce resource to preserve your wealth. Now let's look over here to the market section where block fills. So we've been waiting to see some bodies float up to the surface after the 10-10 liquidation and then the 2-5 event where we saw Bitcoin crash. down to $60,000 before rebounding up to 70. But this might be one of the culprits here. Blockfills, a Susquehanna-backed crypto lender with $60 billion in 2025 crypto volume, suspends deposits and withdrawals, citing market volatility, reviving memories of 2022's FTX-driven contagion. So yes, this could be one of the big players that gets blown up from the last couple of months of market action. Do you think that the bottom is in here, Sanjna, or do you think that we got more downward price action to go for Bitcoin in the months ahead?
I think we're close to the bottom, but I do see one more crash happening in 2026. It could be in 1 or 2 months, or it could be more towards the end of the year. It is going to go up before it goes down. I can't say what price, but my predictions are it's going to go anywhere between 40 to 50,000. Again, this shouldn't cause fear. It shouldn't cause, any uncertainty with Bitcoin. It's just one more reason for you to buy more and stack more sats. But yeah, it's based a lot on global factors. If you see the stock market, you see the economy in general, everything's a little down. The cycles happen, volatility happens. It's just a part of Bitcoin. But I see them the next 2 or 3 years being great for Bitcoin and reaching new highs. So nothing to worry about.
Yeah, nothing to worry about. I think it would be kind of surprising if we did go down to 40 from here. That would be quite the shock to some people. I think, in my personal opinion, us just treading water here around 60, 70 for the next 3 or 4 months would frustrate a lot of people, and I think cause a lot more rage quits. And then you can mark the real bottom once a few more people flee because they got bored or they've given up. But Bitcoin rewards those with patience, as we've seen over time. And you got to begin to win it. Of course, the biggest moves in Bitcoin only happen on around 10 days a year. So if you're not in Bitcoin for those 10 days, you miss it. And we don't want to miss it. No, we want to be in it. One guy who's definitely in it is Saylor. And Saylor told CNBC last week that Strategy can withstand a Bitcoin price drawdown to $8,000 and still have sufficient assets to fully cover its debt. So, of course, when Bitcoin goes down, you hear a lot of rumors that Strategy is in trouble, that Saylor is going to be liquidated, when, of course, none of this is true, even though the Bitcoin price might be lower than his average acquisition cost. It does not mean that he is in any risk of not being able to fulfill his debt obligations. They've got about $8 billion worth of debt, and they've got around $50 billion worth of Bitcoin. So, and they've, of course, got $2 billion worth of cash sitting in their cash reserve now. So that's enough to cover the dividends for their preferred stocks for the next 2 years. Do you follow the Bitcoin treasury company space, Sanjna? And what do you think is going on with Saylor and Strategy at the moment?
So Saylor is obviously on a mission to probably hold the most Bitcoin from anyone in the world. But like I said, like he said as well, even if Bitcoin crashes to 8,000, they'd still be able to cover all debts without forced sales. It's a reassurance to investors with the recent dip that you just have to be bullish in the long term and be prepared for volatility. It also exemplifies the corporate hodling strategy, right? This could inspire more firms to adopt Bitcoin treasuries, to just keep buying on the dip. And I don't think there should be any fear. It's never realistically going to drop to 8K. It's going to stay around this range, like you said. And as we experience a few lows, we're just going to experience higher highs as well. So no fear over there at all.
Yeah, Saylor is certainly the man in the arena, and people like to throw tomatoes when they sense the man in the arena is down on his back. But I think that he's got the wherewithal, the smarts, and the Bitcoin stack to withstand this drawdown, and even one further down to, say, 40K, as you said, it might just happen in this year ahead. The question is, what is going to happen with some of these other Bitcoin treasury companies? As we saw this last week, another pivot, Congo, which transitioned into Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin treasury over the last 2 years. They sold 4,451 Bitcoin, worth $305 million, to fund a strategic pivot into AI infrastructure, highlighting how mining firms are transitioning toward higher growth compute markets amid shifting industry economics. It has been a tough year for the Bitcoin miners as Bitcoin mining difficulty is near all-time highs before the last week where it dropped 11%, giving them some relief. But it's tough out there, and we're seeing a lot of these Bitcoin miners transition into AI compute. Do you think that the mining industry is going to look the same as it does today in the years ahead, or are we going to see a much more decentralized Bitcoin mining industry focused on more stranded energy in the future?
So I think it's comparable to the bigger crypto space in general, where there will be much fewer players in the game. Again, it was a lot of hype the past few years. There's a lot of miners who've entered this industry, but I think we're going to see a lot of people just stepping out, like making a transition into AI. It's going to be the same in AI, where everything gets pretty saturated, and there's going to be a few players left. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where the space takes us in the next couple of years. Definitely think it's going to be more decentralized and just have fewer players in the space.
Yeah, I think that this era that we see ourselves in right now with these giant warehouse-sized Bitcoin mining farms might be a historical oddity, in that in the future, we're going to see much more decentralized, smaller mines around the world based on where you can get the cheapest energy. And that's usually not near city centers or these big manufacturing warehouses. It's out in the sticks, right? Getting stranded natural gas or using renewables, of course. And that this industry is going to change dramatically in the years ahead as a lot of these Bitcoin miners transition into high performance compute and the Bitcoin mining industry gets spread out to the edges. Yes. And we got another story I'd like to talk about here. China instructs banks to sell U.S. treasuries and limit new purchases amid concerns that U.S. debt may expose them to sharp volatility, signaling that a potential shift away from dollar-denominated reserves is in the works. Of course, we've seen China cut their treasury holdings nearly in half since the mid-2010s, and now they are getting even more explicit with their instructions to banks that, hey, we don't want you piling into U.S. debt anymore. So, Sanjana, what do you think is going on here? Do you think that we are seeing a decoupling between the U.S. and China, both from an economic and manufacturing standpoint?
Yeah, and I think this is huge. It's huge news that one of the biggest countries like China is taking such a move. I think other countries could follow. I think we always knew that the U.S. Bitcoin reserve would shift, to either another currency or, okay, the Bitcoiners will say Bitcoin in just a matter of time. But I think it's going to happen sooner than later, especially if countries like China take such steps. There's a lot of political tension between both countries. It's definitely going to weaken the dollar dominance, potentially boosting alternatives like Bitcoin as a neutral reserve amid all the global tensions that are currently happening. But yeah, I mean, this gives way for another currency like Bitcoin to come in. At this point, we don't really see what other currency could take over after the US dollar. So it could be good news. You never know. But I think there's just been so much tension between China and the US, and with the US, implementing all these tariffs with other countries around the world as well, it's just causing more heat and more tension. So it's only a matter of time that countries would follow.
Yeah, it does seem as if the world is transitioning to neutral reserve assets, whether that be gold over for the East, for the BRICS countries, and maybe over here in America, we want to go with Bitcoin. The majority of Bitcoin is held by Americans, or Americans constitute the largest group of Bitcoin holders. And so it would benefit America if we were to transition to that as our main reserve asset. Interesting. We'll see how it all plays out, but the tension is certainly high. And I do think that America and China are going to have an interesting decade, if not decades ahead of us as we enter into this AI world. But before we get into our last story here, I do want to give a big shout out to our friends over at Arch. Who is Arch? Arch is the leading destination for Bitcoin-backed loans. Arch provides world-class security and white glove service so you never have to sell your Bitcoin. If you're listening to this show right here, you've done the hard part. You stacked through highs and lows. You held and you did not panic sell when we just crashed to 60K. But still, real life happens. You got taxes, new opportunities. Say you want to put a down payment on a house, just a big purchase in general. But you don't want to sell your Bitcoin because that just feels wrong. This is where Arch comes in. Think of it like a flexible line of credit with rates starting as low as 8.5% APR. You borrow what you need, repay anytime, and only pay interest on what you use, all without triggering a tax event. The best part, the Bitcoin stays yours. Arch has a strict no rehypothecation policy, so your collateral is never lent out. It's held in a qualified, insured, bankruptcy remote custody with full transparency. So yeah, if you want to get some cash today for your Bitcoin, it's actually a great time to probably do it. Bitcoin's already crashed 50%. So you have much better opportunity to get a loan that will, of course, will never be called for liquidation because I don't think Bitcoin's going to go down that much more from here. So get your cash today at archlending.com. That's archlending.com. Very nice. Cool. Sanjana, I want to bring you back up on stage because we got some more stories to talk about. Speaking of a strategic Bitcoin reserve over here in America, Brazil reintroduces a bill to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve with authorization to acquire up to 1 million Bitcoin, joining the growing list of nations exploring sovereign Bitcoin holdings. So this popped up on the radar last year, seems to have been put back in the closet for a little bit, but now we're here. They are talking about it once again in the parliament in Brazil. Do you think Brazil could lead the charge with a strategic Bitcoin reserve of 1 million Bitcoin?
Yeah, for sure. Just following countries like El Salvador in good news, we have this continent doing the right things. But it's great because it normalizes nation state adoption. It could spark a reserve race, elevating Bitcoin status globally. And Brazil's one of the biggest countries in South America. So again, other countries are just gonna, follow and they're leading a great example. I think everything happening in El Salvador is positive. We've seen a lot of positive changes. We like to believe that all these the rate of violence, criminal activity, all of that has gone down. More businesses are moving to El Salvador. So it's on an economical and political level, just a beneficial thing to do this. And Brazil doing it, I think, will just make a lot of other countries adopt and like I said, will be the lead example that other countries follow by what Brazil does as well. Yeah, no,
it's an interesting time in Latin America. There seems to be a sort of right-wing shift. We just saw it, of course, in Argentina, Chile, Costa Rica. A bunch of elections have gone to right-wing populists following the influence, I think, of Bukele and the way that he's cleaned up his country. And of course, he has the example of Bitcoin to share with the rest of Latin America. It'll be interesting to see what Brazil does. 1 million Bitcoin is no joke. If they hopped right into the strategic Bitcoin reserve race with that much, they would be a top player, no doubt. And I mean, they are an economic powerhouse. So it would be interesting to see if Latin America can lead the way when it comes to Bitcoin. Very nice. Well, Sanjana, this brings us to the end of our hour. I want to thank you so much for joining on with us today. Again, let's give a big shout out to what you're doing with Rhino in terms of women's Bitcoin education and the summit coming up.
Thank you so much, Rob. It was great being on. Great speaking to you and Natalie. And yeah, I hope to speak to you soon again.
Absolutely. So yes, the Women of Bitcoin Summit is coming up March 4th and 5th. Go and sign up today and go check out what Sanjana is doing with women's Bitcoin education over on rhinobitcoin.com. They got a whole section of the site devoted just to that. So thank you so much for tuning in to today's version of the Daily Stack. I'm your host, Rob Wallace. We got another show coming up in about 15 minutes time. So hold on. We're going to play some music in the transition, and we'll get you coming up next with some more Daily Stack content. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. This has been Rob Wallace. Until next time, so long. Bye-bye.
Hey, gang.
Let's turn it on.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Matt,
How's it
good
going?
to see you. Adam, good to see you. Thanks for taking the time today.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks to you guys. How's it going?
It's going. It's going. Kids are off school today.
Same.
Yeah. So they're trying to figure out everything, what to do. I don't know what to do with myself, Dad, type thing. But no. Adam, where are you located again?
I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Oh, so is it nice and warm like it is here in Chicago today?
Yeah, we got a weirdly warm day, so I think I can see the grass for the first time since Thanksgiving. So
That's awesome.
that was not a joke.
Yeah. No,
and so no, it was.
It's
But yes, truly, it's melting enough to see the grass for the first time. So yes, particularly exciting. Lots of people getting outside. I think the kids are outside. To your point, trying to bask in the nice rays.
Nice. So we also have my co-host here, Matt Aggie, with me. Matt, good to see you. Is it nice and warm down there in Texas?
Yeah, Houston. It's it's a nice 75 degrees. Nice and sunny today. So, a little reprieve from the winter storm a couple of weeks ago, which is not well suited for us, certainly down here.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you guys don't get a lot of snow down there, and when you do,
it's devastating.
Yeah, it's like the end of the world. But Adam, obviously, wanted to bring you on. You have quite the history in the Bitcoin mining space. And for those that don't know who you are, I think it would be great. Why don't we start with maybe a quick intro of yourself, and what you've been up to, what you've been working on previously, and give us the rundown.
Sure. So myself started my career, did like a finance undergrad, started my career in consulting in Chicago, actually. Learned a lot of smart things from a lot of smart people. And that's where I first kind of became obsessed with the world of Bitcoin. Switched over to early stage venture capital, invested in a lot of companies, was lucky enough to be able to evaluate, get to know a lot of those in the crypto space when it was still early on. Got an MBA, came out, bounced around a couple of crypto startups. Found my way to Kraken, the exchange. So had a lot of fun working on Kraken strategy team and finance team. It's one of those things I wish everybody in the world could experience, working for an exchange in the sense of a 24/7, 365 operation. So a lot of fun there. And then ultimately found my way to Mara at 2021, the Bitcoin miner. Spent 4 years there in various strategies and growth roles. And learned more about energy than I ever could have envisioned. I knew mining was at the intersection of energy and crypto, and I thought crypto was the more difficult side of that equation. But I think I was wrong. I think energy was even more complicated, and I don't know. It's led to, obviously, Bitcoin means a lot of different things to different people, a lot of different rabbit holes to go down. But the energy one, I think, is one that is potentially more overlooked than many of the other rabbit holes. And I think, again, a feature, not a bug of the Bitcoin blockchain. And I don't know, that's me.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you've seen a lot, and there's a lot going on in the market. It's hard to know exactly where to start, but you're a perfect person to kind of comment on maybe what's going on the last few months and kind of year in the ecosystem. I guess as far as Bitcoin and the network goes, we're coming up on some nice round numbers here. Like, there's the 1 millionth Bitcoin block is coming up. The 20 millionth Bitcoin issue is coming up soon.
Crazy.
So, some cool round numbers. And as far as the market goes, a lot of pressure. We've seen some crazy hash rate moves, some crazy difficulty moves. I guess, what's your overall take right now? How are miners coping with the market? What's your take on the market as far as that goes?
Yeah, of course. Infinite thoughts. On the Bitcoin mining side, I'd say we're starting to see, again, this is kind of a feature, not a bug, as these things swings around. As you see, particularly network difficulty and global hash rate shift around, because a lot of these recent huge declines in global hash rate, and therefore huge declines in network difficulty, were caused by some of these winter storms that we have going on, especially here in the United States. And I think ultimately a good thing that you saw a lot of this hash rate come out, because it means that a lot of these Bitcoin miners are responding to the call and the need for power. Well, two things. Number one, they might be being altruistic and being nice and giving their power back to wherever it's needed. But that's usually not the case. Usually it's paired with an economic incentive to give that power back and free up those electrons for a better use, meaning people running their electric heaters or things like that during these crazy winter storms. And so you see it going up and down, but I would argue it's better than not seeing anything. You know, when we have these system-wide grid shocks, I would say a worst case scenario would be not seeing global hash rate do anything, because that means that Bitcoin miners are just ignoring what's happening to the country when we have these particularly weird polar vortexes going through the United States and things like that. Instead, I find it encouraging that Bitcoin mining is responding. I think it shows the maturity of the ecosystem in that Bitcoin miners used to be a customer of power grids, power utilities. They would buy power. It was very transactional. It was, please give me 100 megawatts. That's it. I'll send you money. We're done. Instead, that's no longer competitive and evolved. And Bitcoin miners started leaning into their unique advantage of being this interruptible load. Not many things out there can consume 100 megawatts of power and give it back within seconds or minutes. And that is the unique advantage that Bitcoin mining has, and therefore it should be leaning into it. And because it's leaning into it, that unlocks more power for Bitcoin, and therefore unlocks higher difficulty, greater security for the network, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know, talking out loud, I guess another way to say it is, if Bitcoin mining wasn't responding to these grid stresses, then it wouldn't have had access to that power to begin with. Like, the reason it has so much power is because it's able to be flexible. If it refused to be flexible, it would be much less megawatts dedicated to Bitcoin mining, and therefore a much less secure network. And so a lot of volatility, but again, when you look at the underlying rationale, I think it's all still good news for the security of the network, the growth in the network, the maturity of the network. And it shows that's no longer the side project of things in, one computer chip in my garage, but this is important to the infrastructure of the country and infrastructure of countries around the globe. I don't know, that's just touching on one of the recent topics. How's that?
Yeah, that's great. And just real quick follow-up. I mean, a lot of people were calling for like minor capitulation, seeing the hash rate come off, but really kind of maybe more indicative of the temporary winter storm with the V-shaped recovery. I guess what's your feel on the capitulation versus just the resilience of the mining thing?
Yeah, it's kind of both. On the one hand, I'd say the magnitude and the shortness of the dip, I think, shows that it was storm driven, again, grid driven. However, that is not to ignore the fact that in general, average hash prices looking away from the storm are still challenged. But I think that is also the nature of the business, is if there's an extra marginal dollar to be made, somebody else is going to plug in a Bitcoin miner, and global hash rate's going to go up. Your share of the Bitcoin mining rewards is going to go down until we reach that equilibrium. And so, if you take a first principles approach and really step back and say, where does this industry end up? If we hold all else equal, if we hold Bitcoin price equal, global hash rate equal, this ends up as a very boring industry, making utility-like IRRs of just like chugging along. And if your dollar is better put in a savings bond, you're going to put it there. But if you can make a little extra cash Bitcoin mining and it's nice and stable, do there. So in that simple world, this is a very boring industry.
I think you hit the nail on the head on that, though, like on the boring piece, because I think a lot of, and sorry about that, my internet cut out of all times to do that. But, a lot of my friends that are in the institutional space, they look at Bitcoin, they're like, this is boring. Like, this doesn't do much. And I'm like, what do you expect it to do? Like tricks? Like, I mean, but they're the first two that, because I wanted to ask you, you were talking about volatility and all the events. Like, do you think that's also why we're seeing a lot of the ETF? Like, I mean, you're seeing ETF outflows. To me, I'll just say from my side, like being in this market, that's normal. Like, that's just part of a cycle. Like, first of all, BlackRock's not a buyer of Bitcoin. It's the people that own the fund that are the buyer of Bitcoin. Like, I think there's so much, I think, misinformation that goes on. And I mean, you probably see it in the mining space too, but yeah, I wanted your take on that.
Yeah, no, so true. And I think it's exciting to see again how far the industry has come, where you have even these names being mentioned. But to your point, important to understand the details of where everybody fits in and who's actually doing what. And again, I think the space has grown up a lot, and it has a lot of different participants. You have a lot of the OG people still in it. You have these new institutions coming from Wall Street. You have sovereigns around the globe in terms of countries trying to buy Bitcoin. And all of these things, corporations, countries, it's just a sum of individuals. And as individuals, we like putting things in a box. We like saying this is like that. And I think you have all of these different parties trying to do that. I think you have Wall Street saying this is like a tech stock. And so that's one narrative being pushed. I think I'm making it up now, but you may have countries saying this is like gold. I have a bunch of gold. I should have some Bitcoin. So that's like a framing that they bring. And then you have OG crypto people who are like, no, this is like nothing. It should be uncorrelated. And so you have that pushing that. And so again, I think ultimately a good thing that you have lots of different people with their own narratives of what Bitcoin is. And I think that's some of the craziness we see is some narratives coming, some narratives dying. But to be clear, I would rather have a bunch of different narratives with a bunch of different participants than just the OG people with their one narrative. And so, well, it saddens me that we've seen a lot of Bitcoin correlated with NASDAQ and correlated with tech because, again, I was one of the believers that was like, this is going to be uncorrelated, et cetera, et cetera. But I also recognize there's pros because the reason that it's correlated with tech is there's a lot of tech investors that are now in the space. And so, I don't know, chicken and egg. And so, I don't know. I think that's a non-answer. But I think if you take a step back, good that we have so many people looking at Bitcoin through so many different lenses. And that's what causes some confusion, both in terms of headlines and price movement.
No, I mean, I think that's a great way to look at it. I mean, what is the, today I was looking at a stat the other day, and what's the cost currently like to mine one Bitcoin? What is the current cost to actually mine one Bitcoin here today?
Yeah, and this is also where it gets fun because when I started like industrial scale Bitcoin mining in 2021, there weren't that many different Bitcoin mining machine generations.
Right.
And obviously, as Bitcoin went through boom and bust cycles, at times, as we discussed, it was very profitable to mine Bitcoin. And so you had this huge rush to make new machines. You had huge R&D budgets being spent to make a more efficient chip. And so now in 2026, it's kind of interesting because we have latest and greatest current generation machines. You have slightly older machines. You have older machines. You have older machines. And so, well, there used to be like one, and mind you, also we had the institutionalization of Bitcoin in terms of having these publicly traded Bitcoin miners. So for the first time, you had enterprises buying Bitcoin miners in large scale. So what I mean by that is there's a lot of these prior generation machines out there. There's a lot of prior generation machines out there. There's a lot of current generation machines out there. So you actually have a pretty big spectrum of what it costs to mine a Bitcoin. Number one, based upon the hardware that you use. And then number two, your second, that's arguably the most important number. Exactly. Number two is your power. And another strong answer there. And obviously, your best case scenario is latest generation machine, cheapest electricity. However, you rarely have that dynamic duo combo. What you usually have is older generation machine, really cheap electricity, which again, that really cheap electricity might come with not 100% uptime. It might come with not huge sites. It might be a 5 megawatt flare gas site out in the middle of nowhere, but it's essentially free power because the alternative use of the gas was to light it on fire. And so if a Bitcoin miner shows up and says, hey, instead of lighting it on fire, can I give you, make it up, 0.1 cents for it? I mean, logically, people will say yes. And so if you have near free power, do you then want to go out and you can run the math and do the numbers, but you have the choice of latest, greatest generation machine, or you can basically pick up a miner that fell off a truck that nobody else wants because nobody else can make money on it, but you can because you have near free power. Switch that with these multi-100 megawatt sites that people have that might have more expensive power. the numbers might then make sense for them to continually upgrade their machines. And if you have, 95% uptime, suddenly you might want the latest generation machine. And so all of that to say, again, this is good for diversification of the network because energy sources are becoming more diverse, machine types are becoming more diverse. So again, not answer to your question, but there's a huge spectrum, both company by company and sites.
The number I found was roughly around like 84,000 or somewhere around there right now to mine a coin. But, on that, one other thing on that is, and a friend just asked me this weekend, so I want your take on it. He's like, but all these companies are leaving and going to AI. They're just, dipping out on Bitcoin mining. What happens when everybody leaves Bitcoin mining and goes to AI?
Yeah, again, it is on the surface a stressful question, but ultimately I sleep very soundly at night because of, again, just these free market dynamics that we have with Bitcoin mining. Is if somebody converts a giant site from Bitcoin mining to AI, global hash rate will go down. That means the percentage of rewards going to everybody that stick around will go up. That means more people look and say, wow, I can make a lot of money Bitcoin mining, and somebody's going to find another way to fill that. And so it's kind of going to reach this stasis point again. And there's all these shocks to the system, but people add miners or remove miners depending on how profitable it is. And the only nice thing that is arguably compared to AI, Bitcoin mining is much quicker to respond, is much more fluid. What do I mean by that? Bitcoin mining really is a global game. You have people all around the globe Bitcoin mining. And as mentioned, you can do it in a fancy data center. You can do it out in the middle of nowhere, flare gas in a shipping container. And so barriers to entry are still high, to be clear. It's not like, you as an individual can do it in a small scale in your mining, but, it's relative. Bitcoin mining is easier than AI HPC stuff, and so quicker to come online. AI data centers you hear being built over 2, 3, 4, 5 years. A Bitcoin mine you could build in 6 months, and that's a really great Bitcoin mine. And so you'll see people respond to that. And I think ultimately what you'll see is Bitcoin mining, like water, following gravity, finding the cheapest, best place. And so before this huge, incredible demand for AI HPC, Bitcoin mining had the pick of where it wanted to go. It could choose 100 megawatt data centers here, there. There was no one else looking for 100 megawatt data centers. But now there is. And so, again, we learned it just as AI HPC was starting to come online, is whenever we came across the site and the seller was talking to us and was talking to an AI HPC person, we stopped talking to them because the AI HPC person is going to pay a lot more because they can make a lot more per megawatt. And so instead we focused on the other places, focused on places that don't have high-speed fiber. AI needs that. Bitcoin mining can operate on satellite internet. Again, perfect example, not to keep going back to it, is that flare gas. It is going to be difficult to reach the scale, to have the high-speed fiber, to have the redundant power. All these AI data centers want primary power and backup power. If you're out there running with methane coming out of the ground, not a great suit for AI, but perfect for Bitcoin mining. And so I think you'll see Bitcoin mining adapt and, again, find where it's best needed. Another example is the world has recognized it needs more power. And so you have these places building giant new, make it up, hydro dams. And so if you're in Africa building a giant new hydro dam and you look at your population, it's growing insane. Do you want to build a hydro dam suited for your population and business needs today? Or do you want to build a hydro dam suitable for the projected population and business needs for your country in 20 years? You probably want to invest for that 20-year mark. But then inherently that means the hydro dam is going to have a ton of capacity and most of it's just going to sit idle. AI is never going to move there because AI says we want to make sure we have 100+ year timeframes. Bitcoin miners can come in and say, yeah, give us 20 years. And if you need a little bit next year, we'll ship some of our shipping containers out and we'll fill in that gap as you grow into your 20-year projection, if that makes sense.
So those AI platforms, they are more talk about changing how fast these things change. I actually think that they change almost faster. Yes, the Bitcoin space has changed. I started, it was an S9. If there's a throwback for you. It was an S9 and an S11. Was that? Yeah, I think those two. And You know, those things, you turn that on now, you ain't getting anywhere. I doubt it.
No. And I think to your point, Bitcoin mining, this is all stuff that Bitcoin mining went through, and I think AI can actually learn a lot from it.
Yeah.
Bitcoin mining, just as you described, went through this rapid progress of Bitcoin mining chips becoming more efficient, powerful.
We'll never
AI,
get to
yeah,
this nano level, and then all of a sudden, poof, we did.
we did. Yeah, GPUs were kind of boring, chugging along, but now suddenly NVIDIA is like cranking out like every 6 months. It makes
I
the
know all
last
too
one
well
irrelevant.
my NVIDIA stock. It was the most boring stock for the longest time.
Yeah.
And then I was like, whoa, all right, that's
Yeah.
cool.
And now they're doing crazy upgrade cycles. Similarly, as Bitcoin mining chips got so much more efficient and powerful and power dense,
Yeah.
Bitcoin mining had to figure out how to shift from air cooled to liquid cooled or immersion or direct to chip or what have you. And so, you know, Bitcoin mining faced this cooling crisis of, through the law of physics, how do we actually get the heat off of these chips? Because we've done such a good job of making these chips so dense. Now, again, you have the AI data center world freaking out because they've built all of these data centers to be air-cooled GPUs, but the latest Blackwell and everything else from NVIDIA is so dense, it has to be liquid-cooled and direct-to-chip. And so you have people panicking about how do we retrofit our data centers, because we never anticipated that you would need liquid cooled to be competitive if you have a data center. And so again, Bitcoin mining lived through this a little earlier in terms of how to interact with the power grids, in terms of how to find a big data center used to be 10 megawatts. And now you see these gigawatt things. And so I think AI could learn a lot from Bitcoin mining by paying attention and seeing what are some of the struggles that Bitcoin mining did, because I think history is going to repeat itself.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about some of these deals that are happening in the space with hyperscalers and Bitcoin miners, especially since we're on that topic. I worked for a hyperscaler during COVID, and I saw at that time a kind of a rapid growth phase.
No pun intended there, right, Matt? Hyperscaler during COVID.
So I saw a lot of CapEx outlay, right? And perhaps this particular one got out over their skis as far as their infrastructure build out during COVID. And then they had to course correct when the demand waned in subsequent years, layoffs, et cetera. And so I wanted to ask you about the risk of the current build out and kind of who's bearing the risk? Because I kind of view some of it as hyperscalers are kind of outsourcing some of the CapEx, some of the energy, and some of the depreciation risk, so that they can rent compute and not bear all of that on themselves. But how do you feel that some of these deals are taking shape?
It's a fascinating question, which I have a great answer to, but I have a perspective which might change next week. So it's interesting because right now, everybody is rushing for megawatts today. And so, you know, everything is about time. It's not about efficiency, exaggerate, but no AI data center asks what the power cost of the site is. They just ask how quickly can we move in? And so it's speed. And so that's interesting. And everybody recognizes this huge need for megawatts. So again, the market works. And so you have a lot of people looking to find new power sites, everyone. And so let me take it. The people that have power today are people like Bitcoin miners. And so the hyperscalers are contracting with Bitcoin miners, who are converting their sites, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But ultimately the end customer is still this, there's like 10 gold-plated names that people want to work with that are the actual end customer. Okay, so that's today. Looking towards tomorrow, lots of people are developing sites. So Bitcoin miners are looking for more sites. Random Joe Schmoes off the street recognize how much money there is to be made here. And if you can find a big flat piece of land with a bunch of power, you can make a ton of money too. But hyperscalers are also recognizing that they're short on power. And so they too are looking for power. And so the power available today in 2026 is a very short list. The power available in the year 2030 is a much longer list, because again, you have Bitcoin miners working on it. You have random Joe Schmoes working on it. You have hyperscalers working on it. And so that's the biggest risk that I see, is this overbuilt nature, is everybody not recognizing the importance of speed. And what advantage does a Bitcoin miner have versus Amazon for a data center today? It's the fact that Bitcoin miners have megawatts available today. What advantage does a Bitcoin miner have against Amazon for a megawatt in the year 2030? That's a much different question, because suddenly it's just your sourcing team looking for a flat piece of land to build a data center at versus Amazon's team looking for a flat piece of land to look at a data center yet. And so once you remove that time element, it kind of makes it much more competitive and scary, to your point. And so that is something I'm intrigued to see. You might see, what I'm afraid by is the people jumping into this space, seeing how much money is being made today by flipping a site. And they're like, I can do this too, but they don't realize they have a 2030 site, at which point everybody's going to have a 2030 site. And so it's not valuable. So those are like the people I worry about the most.
Yeah.
I guess taking a step back even further is you just have to talk about AI bubble in general. And I don't know, I remain constantly surprised by, again, how much AI is taking over my life. I feel like I could be using all these AI tools more and more. I feel like I'm a power user, and I feel like I could be using more. And then I look around and see my friends who are just scratching the surface. I see other neighbors, that aren't using it at all. And so it just feels like a lot of people talk about it.
Shit. That's that.
Yes, exactly. It just feels like there's so much more to go.
It's really funny, Adam. You bring up a great point. Like my uncle is an executive recruiter, and he works with electric companies. And so like the big ones that do all the transmission wires, and I mean, some of the stories he tells me like of what they're building out there is just it's insanity. But then he was telling me over the weekend, he was mentioning he was talking to some of his clients last week, and like to your point about the AI thing, and to me, the AI piece kind of the only part that reminds me very much of like initial Bitcoin days and initial like internet days is the amount of FU money that's just being thrown around, where like they literally, so they're building, I mean, a gazillion data centers all over, but they laid the foundation for this data center. They had to put the conduit in, and, we're talking massive amount of conduit. And so they did it before the prints were even done. Like before the prints were done from the engineers, like they're already starting to put this down. And then the engineer comes back and was like, you guys got to move this. Like it can't be over there. But the developers were just like, whatever, I mean, like $15 million, like poof, so it reminds me a lot of that. And then the other thing I was going to mention to you is like, with regards to, you've brought up a lot of great points around the energy usage. I don't think people have any understanding. There's so many people that say they think they know how much energy we're going to have in 2030. It reminds me a lot of like playing Sim City, where like you built a fusion, like a fusion power plant. That was like your ideal state. And we don't know. Like, I mean, Google's talking about putting a power plant right next to their, facility for a data center. We tried to do the same thing when I was building a mining facility in Pennsylvania. We wanted to buy a power facility. I don't have zero clue how to run a power facility, but it sounded cool, and we could get a lot of megawatts. I mean, do you see a lot of this correlation between like the two?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think Bitcoin miners, again, were starving and chasing every megawatt they could find 4 years ago. And so they were investigating this behind the meter stuff.
Yeah.
They were reactivating shut down gas and coal plants that didn't make sense to connect to the grid. And Bitcoin miners were like, hey, we could actually benefit from this. Again, this is exactly what AI is doing today. And so I think a lot of commonalities between the two, like I said, the history rhymes, doesn't necessarily repeat itself. So completely agree there. And again, that's the struggle that I have, is you see these huge numbers being spent around in terms of CapEx being spent on AI, how it's like basically propping up GDP, how everybody's investing in it. Like they're unfathomable numbers. Again, when you look at power today versus projected tomorrow, you look at that and you're like, this can't be right. It's too big. But then again, I look at just in my everyday life, like we just discussed, the people that aren't yet using AI, and like there's so much more growth over here. And I just don't know, how to square those two things. I don't know. That's a struggle.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to ask you, where does that leave Bitcoin? I mean, we saw the latest example, I think, was Kango sold, over 4,000 Bitcoin last week, announced a complete pivot. So where do you think ultimately this leaves Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining?
Yeah. I think ultimately, again, it's just this pendulum swinging back and forth to ultimately find equilibrium. And right now, if you're doing the math, and again, hash prices are a little challenged right now, Bitcoin price is down. That's the other hard part about Bitcoin mining. While it's great that you can build a Bitcoin mining site in 6 months, you can't do it in 6 hours. And so oftentimes you're making decisions 6 months in advance. And so if Bitcoin mining is very profitable today, a lot of people are going to spend money on miners, put down deposits, start building sites. And then if in 3 months economics really get challenged, guess what? They're only going to get more challenged in 3 more months because you made a decision at the beginning of this example to deploy new miners. And so,
and then those people have regrets about putting that
Exactly.
capital down, and they're like, "Where's my return?" And it's like, "Pal, I told you it's going to take 3 years,
6 months.
to get,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
whatever."
And so I think that's what you see happening is a lot of people made decisions to invest in this. Economics got challenged, and they got more challenged because people made decisions prior to the economics being challenged.
Yep.
And so that's what we are. And so now you have a lot of people sitting there saying, okay, looking at the Bitcoin mining economics today, would I rather do this or would I rather convert my site to AI? And a lot of the numbers today, if you have a site that's truly suitable for both, it's pretty hard to say Bitcoin mining today because the numbers are so superior for AI in terms of just how much money AI makes per megawatt, and therefore how much ultimately flows down to who owns the site. However, there are plenty of sites that are not suitable for AI HPC.
Yeah.
And once that pendulum swings back too far, again, there'll be a mad rush for people to try to find, this will be super funny if we find ourselves in 5 or 10 years ripping out our GPUs to install Bitcoin miners. And like, how in your face is this going to be in terms of the pendulum swinging back and forth?
I mean, I think the way I look at it is like, I think so many people have conflated this to be like, we're going to make it's either Bitcoin mining or AI. It's like they're battling at each other. And I don't think that's really the true fact, because a lot of the infrastructure you have for AI, you can use for Bitcoin mining. Yes, the cooling is obviously going to be different, but I think everything is, we've seen this game, you brought it up earlier. We've seen this morph into many other things. Like, I think we're going to see a continued evolution on that front. And one of the things I wanted to bring up that I think is the elephant in the room that no one is really talking about is, so power cost is obviously, it's number one, number two constantly if you're doing this. The way that the rates are set for electricity, PJM on the east, and then I think it's it's another one on the west side or on the west coast. But they've been saying like that system is completely broken. I mean, I'm living it here. You're living it too here.
Yeah,
we're all living it. But what are your thoughts on that? Because it's one company that controls all of that and leaves it to the rest.
Yeah, I think it's forcing into the limelight a lot of these issues, like you said, how they work this way. And I just think there's a distinction, and this is going to be very important for the Bitcoin mining world, is it's very important that the Bitcoin mining world is not lumped in with the AI data center world. Because right now, the AI data center world is being very demanding. They're saying, we want a ton of power. We want it 24/7. We want to be in control. You, the grid, serve us, the AI company. Bitcoin miners, again, started that way, but evolved very quickly.
How's that gone over with the government with that approach in the past?
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be very interesting to see how it shakes out in terms of like donations and all this fun stuff. But Bitcoin miners recognized that they needed to be flexible. And so if done well, Bitcoin miners will be able to educate people that Bitcoin miners are actually the solution to the problem you just pointed out, not the problem. The problem is a lot of people showing up and saying, I want 24/7 power. The solution is people showing up and saying, hey, give me cheap interruptible power. I mean, the best example I've come to as an airline is, imagine if you showed up to an airline and said, I promise to buy every empty seat on this airplane. I want it cheap, but if somebody else wants a seat, they can have it. And if it's empty, let me know and I'll take it for super cheap. Like,
you're their hero.
That would be every airline's dream. Exactly. And so if Bitcoin mining can be that for the grids, give us all the spare stuff, we'll be flexible, we'll work together. Bitcoin mining has to position itself as a tool in the grid's tool belt and not another demanding customer. And then we'll see if AI evolves from a demanding customer to a tool, but that's going to take time.
Yeah. No, I think that makes 100%. I mean, so though, obviously the one other thing that we didn't touch on was like the individual mining that people have been doing. You hear all these stories about people running miners on their desktop and stuff. And I assume, there's quite a few people. We have a diverse audience here. So, I mean, you have people in retail, you have people on the institutional side. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that whole, like, running a miner from your desktop?
Yeah. I mean, two thoughts. The first initial thought is it's fun and you should try it. The best way to learn about things is to try things. And I learned a lot from the first miner I plugged in my apartment. And again, there's this spectrum of miners, and mining has gotten sophisticated enough where they now have purpose-built home miners, which are great.
Yeah.
And so that's the first initial gut reaction. And then the second reaction is to then run the math in terms of how much this is making you or losing you. It's very easy to do. Not the easiest, because your local utility probably has, I'm guessing your electric bill is very confusing. But luckily, though. Yes, exactly. In terms of the power generation cost, the transmission and distribution cost, you're like, how much am I actually paying per kilowatt hour?
Right.
But good news, versus when I first tried a decade ago, I didn't have AI. So now you can just jam your power bill into AI and say, what do I actually pay per kilowatt hour? It'll tell you. And then you can quickly Google what the current profitability per kilowatt hour of Bitcoin mining is for your machine, and you'll know how much you're paying. And if you're in some weird spot where you're making money, then great, plug in more miners. If you're in some weird spot where you're barely breaking even, then whatever, mine a,
is Minnesota an open or closed grid?
We have pretty expensive electricity here. And so I do not have a lot of miners plugged in. How's that? Because I mean, to talk to people stacking, it's a way to dollar cost average. Is like you can join a pool, which again is a whole thing we haven't talked on. Is once you buy a miner, you've made this like financial investment that's going to force you to learn a lot about your electrical grid,
for sure,
about pools, about wallets, about all this stuff. So it's worth the learning if you have the ability to do so. And quite frankly, another side note, I find it one of the most helpful ways to convince your friends to get into Bitcoin. Is I think a lot of the world struggles with this amorphous concept of like invisible internet money. But as soon as you like show them a thing and they can like look it, feel it, hold it, feel the heat coming off it.
Yeah.
I think that makes skeptics be like, oh wow, there is something here. This is real. But
I kind of feel like
them to lean in.
I feel like it's kind of screwed some of these mining, so some of these mining companies that went public, obviously you go public because you want to get capital and you want people to invest in you and yada, yada, yada. But at the same time, it's not like private markets where people are more patient when it comes to, okay, it's going to take us longer to get return on our investment. Public markets, those people want returns and they want them now. And I think we're seeing that, what do you think of all the companies that are public right now on the mining side? They're just getting crushed.
Yeah, it's hard because they used to be all, pretty good substitutes for each other. Like they were all just a Bitcoin miner.
Yeah.
And now it's hard because it's pretty hard to put two next to each other because somebody has converted all of their sites, as you mentioned. Yeah. Somebody has converted half their sites. Some of them are buying GPUs and want exposure to owning the GPUs. Some intentionally have said, we don't want to own GPUs. Some sit on a giant pile of Bitcoin. Some do not sit on a giant pile of Bitcoin. So I agree with what you said in terms of public investors demanding stuff, et cetera. But I would say it's only exacerbated. Yes, and 100%. We have a problem of people. It's like hard to
instant gratification problem.
Yeah, and it's hard to even tell people what you're doing when there's so much noise.
Oh yeah.
It's like almost a communication narrative problem of how are we different than anyone else when everybody's changing their story, their plan week by week. And so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out.
100%, Matt.
Yeah, you brought up a couple of points about public companies and investors. We had a couple of analysts on a few weeks ago reviewing their 2025 review, and they noted the kind of outperformance of those equities where the miners had done a major pivot to AI, given the context of everything that happened last year. I wonder though, like in a true environment where, let's say, Bitcoin actually catches a legitimate bid, if the environment loosens up, rates come down, if the more pure play miners who are actually holding a treasury could see a different environment, maybe outperformance of those who are saddled with more capex and infrastructure.
Yeah, most definitely. Again, one quick, just like we joked about with that 6-month decision thing, is if Bitcoin price goes to $1 million tomorrow,
everyone's in.
Everybody's going to want to be a Bitcoin miner because it's going to make so much money. But guess what? It's going to take 6 months for global hash rate to keep up. And so the people that kind of survived the bad time, they're the ones that get to reap massive rewards. While again, you need 6 months for that equilibrium to come. And so if it's the most profitable business in the world, you have 6 months of all those people rushing to catch up and get exposure to the business. And so, yes, very real world there, let alone that the treasury you sit on. And so, yeah, completely agree. It's kind of a bet on Bitcoin. And ultimately, that's just a bet on demand because we know the supply. And so if I take a step back and I feel confident that demand for Bitcoin is only going to go up, I feel confident that Bitcoin miners are going to remain nimble in terms of finding new and unique energy sources. I'm confident that AI is going to start to recognize they have a lot to learn from Bitcoin miners, and that Bitcoin miners are going to be the ones continuing to innovate and really push the envelope in terms of what can be done from an energy perspective, from a computer chip perspective, from a cooling perspective, from a networking perspective. They're the ones moving fast and breaking things, and it'll be interesting how many of those learnings are ported over to AI.
I mean, the energy problem, the energy problem that everybody talks about, that's a problem that we ourselves as humans have created. It's not one that's not solvable. It is absolutely solvable. It's to the point, it kind of goes down a slippery slope because it goes to the point of like, okay, you can bet there's companies out there that don't want you to solve those problems because they're making nice money on that cost of electric. I mean, they said we were going to run out of oil how many years ago? And I mean, literally, I remember a guy used to be on TV every, like, I don't know, at least every other week. And because I used to work at the floor of the exchange here in Chicago. And he's like, oh, we're going to run out of oil. We're going to, 2020 is the end. And like, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I feel like this is going to be the same story though, where like, oh, amazingly, we figure out how to make more energy and more electric in this country. I think, I don't know. I mean, I'd love your, I know we only got a couple minutes left, but I'd love your thoughts on that.
No, you're right. And I think it's, again, just this belief in like the market and us as a society is, on the one hand, if we're short on energy, it's a good thing that you should try to make more energy for humans. And the good news is most economics will reward you if you find some secret way, whether it be, again, like fission, fusion, et cetera, et cetera. Those people experimenting with small nuclear reactors, like they're going to be financially rewarded if it works out. And so we have a lot of people doing bets like that. You have a lot of people doing more of the stuff that we already know how to do, building new gas plants, building those solar plants, building batteries. I think this was a big wake-up call to regulators that we have to be more open to responsible innovation in the electrical space. People are talking about how to fix transmission lines. And so it's a very confusing problem because there are so many pieces. But so many pieces also means a lot of different vectors to innovate on. And we'll see which ones are best to do first.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, honestly, I think it's one of those things that when we look at everything going on in this space, we've seen this movie before. Whether Matt worked at a big, huge oil company, and if we think that oil companies are going to be like just roll over and be like, okay, yeah, here, take my money away. It doesn't work like that. Like, it's all. That's what I tell all my friends, like that are not in capital markets. They're like, what should I invest in? I'm like, invest in the shit you use every day. You have a power bill. You pay power. Invest in the company because I can almost guarantee you it's public, and it's not going away because it's a almost a monopoly. but I didn't say that, but I did.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So,
yeah. I mean, even to ask yourselves these questions again, I far underappreciated how much goes into making it work when I flip the light switch in my house. Again,
you're
it's
taking power away from AI and Bitcoin is what you're doing. Didn't you know?
yes,
Like,
it's a conscious decision every time that one less prompt is going to be
should I
answered.
switch
I
it
have
on
to,
for that miner or switch it off?
yeah, I need to see what color shirt I'm wearing that day. Yeah, I mean, again, just like even asking these questions, just like Bitcoin caused a lot of us to ask, like, what is a dollar? What is value? Like,
Yeah.
why does a dollar have a, like, those were all big questions. So too, Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining cause you to ask those same questions for energy. Like, what is energy? Why is it valuable? Why can't it be stored? How do you translate it? How do you transmit it? These are some like philosophical questions that you quickly run into on Bitcoin and the Bitcoin mining side. So I encourage everybody to get lost in them because it's fascinating to do so.
100%.
Absolutely.
So Matt, you know, let you close it out, but Adam, if people want, before Matt closes out with any additional questions, where do people find you? And what are you going to be up to over the next couple months?
Yeah, you'll see me continue to, obviously this space is a passion, so you'll continue to see me be around this space. You can find me on X at Swicktalk, SWICKTALK. Yeah, let me know if I can ever be helpful with anything. Clearly this is something I love. And so that's my biggest, thanks to everybody for listening. That's my biggest thing, is to just please poke around and get yourself confused, because the more questions people ask, the better.
Yeah. So final question from me. And I don't know if it's just my algorithm, like my timeline, but I'm seeing some absolutely generational FUD out there. And just the all-time greats FUDsters from history are back, like big blockers. After the Epstein files are back, SBF is out there asking for a pardon.
Yeah.
You know, we've got the original Infinite Pizza Lady, Quantum's out there, and then the Financial Times. So it's like a who's who of FUDsters. To me, I don't know, that kind of indicates a lot of bottom signals, but I don't, what's your call on the Bitcoin price? You know, where do you think we're going for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I am cautiously optimistic. I just, again, my own perspective I've lived through is since the beginning when I got in, I was so excited for institutions to come. I was excited for institutions and I was excited for regulations.
Yeah.
And we kind of have both those. Regulations are still ongoing. And so even myself, like I remain very excited, committed to this space, but I had these two very bright North Stars for over a decade. And so I think a lot of people are wondering what's the next huge thing to latch onto.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's leading to a lot of some of the confusion today. But again, ultimately I take a step back and I say, who cares? Because we know the supply. And so this is only about it on demand. And I think there's only more people to learn about this. I think there's only more people to start asking questions about our monetary system, ask questions about our utility grid. And I think a lot of those things are going to lead people to saying, oh, shoot, I need some Bitcoin. And it's easier than ever to get so, whether it be self-custody or through one of these ETFs. There's kind of no excuse.
No, that's very true. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure, Adam.
Thanks, guys.
I don't want to keep you too long because I know your kids are off school and it's a nice day, so you got to take advantage of that up in Minnesota during these cold winter months. I'm going to do the same here in Chicago. But you mentioned where people can find you, Swift Talk at Swift Talk on X, and then also I think you got a LinkedIn profile as well.
I do.
Yeah, so definitely for those listening, encourage you to reach out. He definitely has a great grasp and overview of the mining and overall Bitcoin ecosystem. So thanks again, Adam. Matt, always a pleasure. And, you know, we'll definitely have you back on here, you know, after we're back up, you know, in price, you know, so everybody.
Yeah. Let's have the champagne popping talk. All right. Amazing. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks,
All right.
Adam.
Thank you.
Be good.